Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Liners, a series centered around key influencers and players in the performance marketing space. My name is Joey Liner of Liner Connections. It's been a minute since I've been here with everybody. It's been a lot of activity since the start of the year with shows. I also have some craziness going on in my personal life in a good way, and I'll talk about that at some point. But I am really excited to have my guest today, as I say, a new friend. Most of the folks that I've had so far are people that I've known for a while, but I met this guest actually at Lead Generation World, and her name is April Wong. So, April, say hi. Please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name's April Wong. Thanks for having me, Joey.
Yeah, of course. So I'll tell a little story how we met, but then I obviously want to get your perspective because we were at a dinner together at Lead Generation World. It was the my 20 years working in the space. It was the first time that I actually was a large dinner with equal amount of men and women, and but also like women of leadership. And fortunately enough, I got to sit next to you and get to know you a bit and who you are. And, I was really intrigued by our conversations, especially because I've worked in the contact center space for a long time. But what was your take on the dinner?
Well, I mean, it was kind of like what you said, decades of I mean, we've done so many dinners probably, underneath our belts, right? Like for so
Yeah,
many years. But for me, it was all different industries from like consumer electronics to SaaS tech,
yeah,
futurism, any of
yeah.
those. And I honestly, it was astonishing. Like what Adam from Rengba did alongside with the founding team of Link Unite, Amanda Ferris and Sarah Malo, they were really setting the status quo. It, we were just all leaders that were there. And as I said, usually when I go to these dinners, I'm like the only female, or maybe like two other, compared to like 15 men. That it was great to be inclusive, and I truly thought that it was a big impact. It was a very very special dinner.
It was, and like you said, I mean, shout out to them for changing up the traditional format because I've been on the other side of those dinners where it's horrible. It's awkward, to be there and have one woman be in an uncomfortable situation. In fact, I saw Amanda, she actually, there's a picture of her with like 20 guys around. It's like, come on, we got to do better than that, and it was great. It was awesome. Adam Harrison stepped up, Amanda, Sarah, my former partner Sean Fenlon from Double Positive. He
Oh
actually
yes.
started the CEO dinner. I don't know how long ago, but I know he's been able to get other folks involved like Adam to host, and I know he's happy and proud of Adam, and we all are. That was hopefully now to be the precedent moving forward, and should be inclusivity for all of us and growing together and learning together is awesome. And Adam gave a great toast there, mentioning that. And
Yeah.
fortunately, like I get to meet you, so I'm excited to have you today because I want to learn. I know everybody wants to learn more about what you do, or I think everybody's going to want to know that, and I know they will. But how was you just also got back from the affiliate summit? How was that?
I was actually going to say it was affiliate summit's amazing, and I think that dinner actually made some waves
Yeah.
because we later on the same women that attended the dinner at Lead Generation World were actually invited to another CEO dinner at Affiliate
Oh,
Summit. So it
nice.
was nice to see the same leaders. I mean, it would be better if we met new leaders there, right? But
Yeah.
it certainly did make some waves where people were like, "Oh, actually, we may need to actually invite more women. Maybe there are leaders now," and that's been a change. But it was great to see that, and just back to back from one show to the next. The show that we went to, like, has already made such an impact, and that warms my heart.
Yes, yes, and it's Great start to the new year. Um, what? Because I'd say you're a new friend. Like I've been I feel like I know everybody. I've been in the space for 20 years, and I got to meet you. And tell me about like your background. Like, how'd you get into performance marketing?
Oh my gosh, I think I'm a very eclectic person. So I'm all over the place.
That's awesome.
Growing up in the Bay Area, you get so exposed to all different types of industries. So I'm very fortunate about that. Really, I got into performance marketing back in, it's almost, it's past a decade with Sony Electronics.
Yeah.
But I
Wow.
ran their global concept stores that was like an international project, and to be honest, I was running their like sales team, giving feedback of like, hey, I think it works here. The international team doesn't necessarily like this might not translate here, et cetera. Right. So we were working on these stores, and it was like in Century City, and down in LA. And to be honest, I was actually really frustrated with the marketing. I'm throwing people under the bus here. I apologize. I really don't mean to, but it was a their initiatives just didn't really translate to the customer clientele that we had. So I think I'm
Right.
one of those people who, was in sales that was very frustrated with our marketing because it just never correlated. And I think a lot of enterprises have that problem, right? Where if the
Yeah.
marketing team and the sales teams don't really work together, then no matter what it is, it's just gonna, you're talking over each other, and it just won't work. And it's not a, amplifier in that case. But the biggest instance for me was we ran an art gallery that wasn't really Sony related, but on the side, I had already talked to Sony PlayStation's group Naughty Dog, which they've made some really big video games and
Yeah.
movies now. I think it was like either the launch of like The Last of Us or Uncharted or something like that,
Oh, wow.
which are like now like movie adaptations or like TV
Yeah.
show adaptations, right? Like
Yeah.
and so we had wanted to do that, but the marketing team was like, "Oh no, we're going to run like a gallery." I'm like, "Those aren't even our customers." So that really made me extremely determined to like work on like experiential marketing. And then that got into like the performance side of again, like, yes, this was fun, this was great, but that's not really our clientele. So like let's translate that back into sales at the end of the day. Um, and so I got into Sony's like experiential marketing team and like created like memorable events that ended up actually making a profit within like these sales like with these events. And that led me into like SaaS, their experience, and Samsung and smart home technology. But really, it was just like, okay, how do I translate really cool experiences? Because every product always had these, like, every brand has to ultimately connect with your customer, right? And
Right.
connections is the most important part to loyalty. And now everyone talks about CX and customer experiences, but what does that really truly mean at the end of the day, right? And it's a full solution and a full experience from knowing and getting to understand the brand to how long we get to keep you as a customer and what happens afterwards. Are you going to ever come back, right? And
Yeah.
that whole retention side, I just became extremely obsessive of it, and ultimately the numbers behind that too. So
Yeah.
fortunately, it's led me to great experiences of like fleshing out franchises for like fitness brands, smart home technology, to like
Wow.
CRMs for real estate.
Wow, what a background! That's amazing. It's a lot of we'll touch on, of course, where you are now, your company, but a lot of folks in performance marketing for years always focused on the front end, customer acquisition, but not as much focused on retention for the clients, because they were always the good thing about performance marketing is we're held accountable to numbers. Well, we know, hey, we're going to spend $400 to acquire this customer. Okay, well, what happens once they become a customer? And I think some of the industries that we're in now are paying a lot more attention to that because it's key for their profitability.
Right.
And there's industries that are adapting to that. But so where's the intersection? So you're now COO and CMO of a company called Caller ID Reputation. How did you do from what you just talked about? How did you get into like? Because you just talked about SaaS for a second, but like, how did you get to Caller ID Reputation?
Yeah, well, I I suppose yeah, I suppose like ultimately, I think people just started hearing that I was able to make brands really grow
Yeah,
at like a small amount of time. So our founder, I had been connected with him, Joe Santino Alcrez. He, you know, we were just talking about, oh yeah, this is how we could grow a business, blah blah. And then 2 years later, he's like, okay, you got to come. You have to help me. This is an amazing brand. Here's an amazing mission. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but I'm selling like, university teaching like futurism and tech, tech trends right
yeah,
now. And I'm doing like a B2C furniture company. Like, why come to this telecom company? And he had a really strong like mission. I'm like, okay, you're right. The phone channel at the end of the day is is something that cannot be replaced. And right now, at its current state, it's mistrusted, right? Like people don't want to pick
yeah,
up the phone. But the mission of people picking up phone calls are actually really important because, we hear things like robocalls being, it has a bad connotation to it.
yeah. Of course.
But I certainly want a robocall if, hey, I need to evacuate soon, or there's an immediate danger nearby me. Or my kids at school. I don't have kids yet, but like
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
those
No,
are those
absolutely.
are the robocalls that matter,
Right.
and or hey, I think the automatic text messages of, hey, I think that there's an anomaly of like your gas power, usage. Go check out your home. If I have multiple houses and multiple locations, even in my current location, I would it would be important for me to know, and it'd be
Right.
imperative. And imagine if it was marked as spam. Like that's
Right.
horrible.
Of course.
So,
Of course.
so yeah, he gave me the mission, and I really believe in this organization, and so I ended up saying, oh my gosh, there's so many fun things, but this is a very important one. So
Yeah, I think and we'll talk about that in a second. But so there, what I'm getting from you is there's a clear delineation between unwanted calls and
mhm,
wanted calls, right? And there's been a major disconnect with our carriers, our phone carriers, in understanding that logic.
yeah,
And so I think your company is a good bridge to a great solution to that. So tell everybody, because I don't think a lot of people understand. It's still relatively new and fresh, but like, what does caller ID reputation do? I like to say, as the cool kids say, explain to me like I'm five. Tell me what caller ID reputation does, so people have a better understanding about it.
yeah. Well, caller ID reputation gives you a transparent layer to monitor, manage, and mitigate your phone numbers, especially your outbound phone numbers. I know that sounds like a little tagline that we actually have on there, but
Yeah,
I'm a very direct person
yeah, you
that
should
shows in
be.
my marketing. So we
Good.
monitor the outbound phone numbers, right? We help you like manage it because we'll let you know, hey, what's the scoring and all these different aggregators because quite frankly, they all operate on a black box, right? They're proprietary algorithms on how they score the calls based off of certain behaviors. It could be user data. It could be, how many times you call. Are you following, the FCC's like, telemarketing sales rules? Are you
Yeah,
following, stir shaking? Or, what is your attestation level? And there's all these um, factors that get you a call scoring. But because there's so many data providers out there, and some of them are in bed with like the carriers, some of them are, you know, creating their own applications.
right.
You really want you want to, have a overview of every single one of these
Yeah.
without actually being associated with any of them. So then it becomes a little bit less biased
Yeah.
for that matter. So I don't know if a 5-year-old can understand that. I think so, hopefully.
Well,
um, but
it's my follow
that's
up
what I
is
call it.
too is like tell us about your company because like you guys to me I actually I think I told you this at dinner. I it was if I'm five, I've seen, but you actually have a cool dashboard that's so like I think it just kind of um, it magnifies what you just said about not having association or bias, and you have a nice dashboard that has every major carrier or spam blocker, and it allows a brand
Mhm.
to go in there, interact with those carriers or spam blocker, app or whatever, and be able to cure your phone number. Is that essentially it? Like, is that in a nutshell? And you guys built a whole company around that, right? So
Yeah. So I mean, you're absolutely right. So we do have a dashboard that allows you to do this. We also give you the playbook. So realistically, yes, you can actually just do it all yourself. I mean, back then, I remember, when I was in call centers a decade ago, it was raise your hand if you have a Verizon phone
right,
or a T-Mobile. Okay, okay, you have an iPhone. Okay, you have an Android. Well, we're gonna call you and we're gonna see. Does it show up as spam, right? The customer is telling us that that's happening. So then like yes, you could do that, you could still do that, or you could use a company like ours where you just see that dashboard automatically. You don't have to enlist you don't have to buy, I don't know, 1632 different devices in order to actually test those numbers yourself, because we have that service for us. In addition to, you know we could also like mitigate that for you. So
yeah,
part of our service is that yes, if you are a known customer, and we know that you're following good practices, then we are going to help you remediate that. We also do have relationships with the carrier. I'm saying like yes, we don't sell them any type of services, right? But
yeah,
we have a thing of it. They know we have a really strong business verification with your organization. Then they would say, oh, okay, well, we're marking them as spam, but caller ID reputation is saying that they're not. Ooh, we need to remove the labels for that. So we have that type of level of a relationship, but
yeah.
we're not the ones selling them the data saying, ooh, you should mark that customer as spam because they're not paying us,
Right.
to white label this,
I love that.
which that's
Yeah, I think brands need to know that exactly that your mission, and I think they'll appreciate that you are helping them interact with more consumers that have raised their hand and said, "Hey, I want to connect with this company, but there's a communication issue. There's a whether it's text or phone. There are some. I think you and I, we saw a couple of the shows here. There's definitely a movement. Our good friends at Troutman Law Firm are working on a organization called Reach, which will help relationships with carriers and brands, and getting rid of unwanted phone calls and focusing on best practices and standards for allowance there, as well as the Consumer Consent Council, which I should be part of, called Leads Council, which is also working on standards for lead sellers, which is all great. We need that. That's the
Mhm.
human element connection with these carriers that have there's a lot of pull through and of course power to deal with to get through. But from a tech perspective, where do you see us going? Like where do you see the future of tech within in the space?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. So, and yeah, you're right. There's a lot of initiatives of like, hey, let's do this right before we get all
Yeah,
banned, right? Because there's so many industries that rely on the telecom industry, for us to be transparent and for people to actually pick up their phone calls, right? Because people
yeah,
are craving that human connection, and ultimately, you just cannot replace a one-to-one connection, and the phone is the
yeah,
closest thing for that. So, I would say there are actually in the tech side some things that I think will definitely happen. Obviously, with Stir Shaken needing to be in effect back in like I think June, the
yeah,
FCC has made it clear of June of 2023 is actually going to be their final extension to be granted for that. So we're going to see actually more spam calls happening.
yeah,
Realistically, what we saw in our data in the past, right, is that as the FCC was pulling down or enforcing store shake-in, when they first
Yeah.
announced it, it was only about 5 to 10% of phone calls of businesses and enterprises being marked as spam. As companies started offering branded call solutions, like putting logos on brands, we saw an upshot of like a correlation that happened, especially um, when the press announcements happened to a few months later. We were seeing these spam calls actually increase by 10% every year. This year, caller ID reputation is really expecting it to be any business calls coming out is a 40% spam like label, which is
Wow.
insane, which is like it's crazy because ultimately like we don't want this industry to be truly just on monetization. Like that's the bad part about that, right?
Yeah.
Like there should be some transparency. Like if you're a hospital and this is like our founder story is that he missed a phone call, a very important ICU phone call on like a loved one. And the sad part is we all have had that experience,
Yep.
and do we want those hospitals to have to actually pay what enterprises can pay in order to do those branded phone calls? Maybe we've swung too much on the pendulum on that, right? And
Yes.
that 40% is scary. I think next year it's going to be 50%, and that's just by the trend. Hopefully that changes, and hopefully Color ID fixes that or
Yeah.
is able to stop that so it's not necessarily rising at 10% every time. But the
Yeah.
FCC is going to be doing that. I think the another technology that's really big is TransNexus identified several use cases of how um, LEI can actually affect um, a know your customer or know your KYC type call authentications or so LEI is actually sorry
I was
I
gonna
give you
say,
the
what is
term.
LEI? You got me on that one.
Yeah, so LEI it actually helps you identify, like uses a number to actually identify your organization. So using
Okay.
this identifying information as a holder, there is a database of hey, these are legitimate organizations.
Yeah.
So if if you are an organization that then provides these branded callings or organizations like us doing like an extensive business verification, potentially there would be things like a virtual LEI or LEI for it to say, okay, we know these organizations actually do good work. These are not the spam organizations. These are not the ones that sit in the gray area, right? And that also translates to similar to like Eric's reach
Yeah.
initiative because with reach I've been sitting on their calls and it's
Yeah.
really hey, we need to start being clear of how if we're giving consent to being called, which organizations are going to be receiving this. We're limiting how those how many times they can sell those leads, and they have to be transparent so the consumer actually knows
Yes.
what they're actually signing up for, right? So
That's right. That's key. It's just
and
because, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
Oh no, I was gonna say, and these like, and I think um hand in hand with the Reach organization and LEI, this is going to be, you know, we're we're seeing a trend that it's going to be more verification, more verified and trusted organizations working with companies like Caller ID Reputation in order to make sure that their calls are actually um, wanted calls at the end of the
Yes.
day.
That's it. Wanted versus unwanted. We have to do a better job. And like you said, we have to tell the consumer what's going to happen because
Yep.
we as an industry have done a poor job of explaining to the consumer the next steps. After you go through the form and you request your insurance quote or your refinance quote, what's going to happen? We're so quick to monetize that information, but I think we don't we don't pay any respect to giving them a better knowledge of understanding, and we're going to focus on that moving forward for sure. Um, I've really enjoyed our time today, but I would not going to let you go before talking about, you and I had a serious conversation at dinner about you being a top chef on some steak cooking there, my friend. I'm a huge steak. I love having a good steak. And you talked about making a tomahawk. You know what tomahawk wagyu? You know what? Give us a little give us a little secret, a little hint on your style of cooking there, my friend.
Oh my gosh. Well, it all starts with some love, actually. It's like understanding meat and how it actually works. I know that this has nothing to do with telecom, but my passion project is that actually understanding how meat works, right? And a lot of it is
Yeah,
actually in science and the chemistry of how fats are actually bonded and how fats are
yeah,
working. So I'm a big fan of meat, and especially, tomahawks. I think
yeah,
ribeyes, like you and I both actually ordered a ribeye, I think, right, for the
yeah.
dinner.
We did.
I would say you know, it's simple, the better, right? I think the secret to it really is letting it rest for about an hour or two outside, like to get it to room temperature. So when you do actually cook it on really searing temperatures, it you're not trying to thaw it at the same time on the bottom,
Yeah.
so or on the inside. So it definitely a really good sear. And you toss some butter at the end. You have some like nice garlic. I love doing a like you throw like oven roasted like garlic that you could just like cut the tops off at first, just
Oh
throw it
yeah.
into the oven, put some like olive oil in there, and it just becomes a spread at the end too. um
Yeah.
like
I
for
love
your
that.
steak if you want to.
Oh my God, I'm
But
so hungry
yeah.
right now. I can't wait because I'm looking forward to coming up to visit you in the Bay Area. Joanna and I are gonna take you up on that dinner, and I want to look. I can't wait to. I love how you talked about connecting with the whole experience because I don't think many people do that when they cook. So shout out to you for getting a better understanding of that and going through that, kind of holistically. Um, it was great having you on the show, April. Anything else you want to say? Where can people find more about you and the company?
Well, thank you first. Again, it's such an honor to be a guest of yours, Joey. You're an amazing person, and I'm
Oh,
so
thank
glad
you.
I got to meet you. And I'm really excited for you to, give us this opportunity here. But you can
Yeah.
actually find us on calleridreputation.com. I'm going to toot our horn in a little bit. If you have any questions about like spam calls or like why are you marked as spam? Usually, if you Google search us, we are the first ones that are always showing up. We've been an expert in the space for a very long time. And so we're really happy to help. But yeah,
Awesome.
calleridreputation.com, or you can just email me directly, April at calleridreputation.com. And, I'd be happy to just help your organizations. So
Awesome. You rock, my friend. Have a great. We
thank you.
filming on recording here on Friday, so we'll probably put it out early next week. But have a great weekend. Great to see you. Get some
Thank
rest
you.
from. I know you've been traveling, so get some rest, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.